Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube. And for those of you in the United States, happy Thanksgiving. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. A controversial holiday for many people. That's why we focus on the two words that comprise the entire holiday: thanks and giving. We love that. So thank you for being with us in the live chat. I know our wonderful moderators here. Ronnie, good to see you, my friend, and everyone else. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, Christine's in the live chat as well. And we're going to also open this up in a little bit here for a little Q&A if you have any questions that you'd like to ask. But I would like to invite you all to take a few deep breaths this beautiful morning or evening, wherever you are, and relax for a moment. And together, we're going to take a little bit of a journey into a perspective that I think we all need to find more often than not. Like I have been saying, and many of you have been noticing, we're living through a time of what many have called hyper reality or hyper novelty, is where so much is reaching our minds and our senses and our perception that it's an overwhelming. And part of what is getting lost is the truth in such times and the facts that they don't matter at all anymore. And all of it can either drive us insane, which for some people that's what's happening, or it can help you get perfect clarity, which is what I think we could gain from such times. And you know what am I talking about here? To let the cat out of the bag, none of it is real. It's all a show, and nothing is as it seems. And I know that every now and then, even if that hasn't been your, let's just say, spiritual journey or your realization so far, even if you believe in this world as you see it with your eyes and perceive it with your senses, every now and then you come across this odd post or video that shows the 40 mind-bending Simpsons predictions of reality, or you find a eerie movie poster that predicted something 30 years ago, or you find connections, or you find Mandela effects, or anything of that kind that point to at least an orchestration of events far beyond anyone's imagination. And so, at the very least, we could say that a lot of the events that we're observing are fabricated, are orchestrated, if not all of them. And that would be a true statement. Most of us, by now sort of realize this, that what happens in the world, whether that is market crashes or whether that is, big incidents, attacks, disasters, oil spills, interestingly enough, even such spontaneous accidents, right, that are being presented as freak accidents. Oftentimes, we find connections from way before that predict such scenarios, or that have at least created a pattern of predictive programming. And what you get when you start combining all of these dots is just a bigger question. And the bigger question is, what is this entire reality that we're experiencing, which has been a big question for us here, on the show. But there is a theme that goes way beyond our time. It goes beyond our culture. It goes beyond, the Western programming, a theme that has been around for a very long time. That this realm, whether you look at it as from a technological standpoint or from a purely more spiritual standpoint, that this realm is what has been called an illusion, is what has been called the Maya, a deception, and not real. Why this is difficult for our culture to even go deeper into or even entertain this thought is because we live in a very materialistic culture. So that is now most of the world. And that materialistic culture basically puts all the emphasis on what we can see, on what we can verify, right? What we can touch, what we have in our wallets, in our bank accounts, what we drive, what we live in, what we wear, where we go on vacation, this constant stimulation of our physical senses and this perception that reality is a a series of physical material events, and that the better the material events are, the better our life is, and that defines who we are and what we do and how we perceive the quality of our lives. And that is, in short, the illusion. Because even if you do not entertain this as being a illusory realm, none of those things will exist in a few years, decades, 100 years from now. They won't, just simply won't exist. They won't be here. So how can something be real that doesn't last? How can something be essential if it changes? And it really can't be. When you introduce or talk about these things in our cultures, and I say probably I would call them the Western materialistic cultures, then people sort of say, well, you're a nihilist, you are, that is depressing, that is sad. To think that all of this is just an illusion is, it gives me the creeps, or it makes me freak out, or what is the sense in it all? Why do we even live? And while I understand these questions, and that they are painful, they still have to be asked. They still have to be examined. And there's an interesting part in all of this is um, that some of the longest lasting teachings and truths that we have perceived and received over hundreds and thousands of years, and some of the truths that are being echoed through all generations, have all come from people who have spent enough time in isolation and solitude. um Either they have spent enough time in a cave and meditated, or they've gone out into the wilderness and they were alone. But wherever they went, and whatever the surroundings were, usually they had removed themselves from society, from the artificial structures, from everything, and basically come all most all of them have come to the same realization. And then they have returned to society to help them within their structures and everything see what they saw or perceive what they perceived, and do it in a way that is accessible and tangible. They're not just throwing it at you, because it is ultimately a journey of realization. Now, I will say this again: none of what we're seeing outside of us is real. Uh, Even from a purely physics standpoint or biological standpoint, is that we only see a tiny minutia, a fraction of the light that is out there. So even in that perspective, we only see less than 1%. I mean, conventional physics, even, or conventional science, even tells us this. So when we see less than 1% and we think that we see reality, we're fooling ourselves. What we see is what our senses and brains can decode, or are programmed to decode. And we call everyone crazy and insane who sees something else, right? So the average person, or the majority of people, sort of perceive things in very similar ways. So a shape, a color, and they can agree on that. There's usually not no big fights over that. But then there are these anomalous people who see things, or see more than that, and they see things differently. And these are the ones who used to end up in an insane asylum. Today they get put on meds and into therapy, and they're sort of being you know try to be conformed back into the same central perception. Now, uh when we look at the time period that we're in now, the technological era that has taken over is also saying that this reality as we're seeing it might not be what we think it is, but it is saying, why don't we just build a reality that looks more like what we want with technology? So they give people glasses, for now it's the VR headsets, and it's called mixed reality, where you will put on that headset and you will see the room as it is, but you will also see things that are not there, that the headset puts in your field of vision. It could be screens that really aren't there. It could be anything. It could be a person that really isn't there. It could be, that is what they call mixed reality. So by just exploring this through technology, humans are actually sort of trying to figure out, what are we missing, or what is this realm? So if none of this is real, what is real? And this is perhaps where we get to the important question: is who is the observer? Right? What part of you has the ability to go into that 40,000-foot view perspective and look at everything and not be attached in that moment to anything? Because when you can look at all that is without emotional attachment, without judgment, without having to interfere with a situation, without having to interfere with all the little intricate details of what we call life, all of a sudden you are just the observer. Now, just the observer has this sort of eternal perspective. And when you can have that perspective, all of it seems quite laughable, right? The intense attachments that we form to outcomes, to situations, to being right, to knowing the right stuff versus the wrong stuff, to getting our way, to getting ahead, to manipulating things in the way that we needed. All of these things, the greed and the anger and the fear and the worry and the doubt and all those things, they seem quite insane. And from the perspective of the eternal, they are, because none of these things matter to the eternal. Why would they matter? To the eternal, that is but a play. It's a play that happens in a confined perceptual space. It doesn't happen in all that is. It happens in this very clearly defined and closed space that we're in. But we're so invested in it, we're so deeply in it, that we think that's all that is. And we, collectively speaking, we do horrible things. We cheat, we steal, we lie, we murder, we wage war, we deceive, we do all these things. But why? Because we have forgotten who we are, and what this is, right? Once we remember, none of it is necessary, because you would never, you would never. Now, this avatar that you inhabit, and the program that it runs, and the habits, and the personality traits, now those traits might do that, and they do. And so humans get to do things that their true eternal self would never do. It simply wouldn't. So what is a balanced approach to this? Because can we all just simply go to the cave and meditate and just forget about all of this? For some reason, that doesn't seem to be a tangible path for most people. That's just not something that they can even imagine. But finding that space of detachment. And what is detachment? If you haven't really ever practiced detachment in a real way, I would start with physical things, because that is sort of the easiest way to find out what it is when you declutter. Let's just say you've lived in a place for a long time, and you've accumulated a lot of stuff, and maybe you have attachment to that stuff. When you declutter, you start, we Christine and I put together years ago this entire course, Declutter Your Life. and people loved it and hated it at the same time because it was so revealing. So what you do in that declutter process, you pick up every little thing. You start with a drawer or a closet, whatever, and you pull something out and you pick it up and you say, keep or toss or something like that. But then you ask yourself, when is the last time I've used this item? What does it mean to me? When you have all these strong feelings, attachments to the item, ask yourself, well, where does that come from? What is the real emotion here? Is it a memory? What is it, right? And so, through going through that process, you sort of learn to sever an emotional attachment to the material, period. And I remember the first time we really consciously did this, we had a fairly big house, and a lot of rooms and a lot of stuff, and we knew we were going to move. So what we did is simply make a decision that we were going to detach from anything that we didn't want or need any longer, and that pretty much led to letting go of 70% of the things that we owned at that time. It was an incredibly freeing spiritual process because with everything that you detach from attachment itself, which is we it's if you would uh paint a painting of you, and if you would paint attachments to all the things that you have, it would be a million little threads that would come from out of you and attach to things and people and outcomes and hopes and dreams and wishes and situations, desires and all that. And the path the path to freedom is to slowly and gently cut all those threads. You can still have a relationship. You can still use a thing. You can still wear clothes, but you are not those things any longer. You don't define yourself. They don't make up your personality. They are not what life is about. And this is a process that ultimately leads you to the realization that those things, after all, aren't real, and that everything that we attach to those things and outcomes aren't real either, and that we really are eternal beings, an eternal consciousness having a very individual experience, yes, but eternal consciousness nonetheless. And where in parts of the world where this is practiced, where this is taught, where children learn that from the get-go, we don't hear from those places or communities or nations. We don't hear them starting wars. We don't hear from them starting conflicts. We don't hear from them, having all these quarrels that we have. Now, to not make it all black and white and bad and good, I think that, for example, born in the midst of our very capitalistic culture, some of the greatest and most mind changing, or at least mind bending ideas were born here. The spirit of innovation, the spirit of exploration, the spirit of discovery. I mean, that spirit, for example, is very strong here. It's just so often misguided. The spirit is strong, but the way that it expresses is so misguided. And in my perception, what has been the imperative, what has been the journey, is to bring things back into balance. But to bring things back into balance only means to bring ourselves back into balance. That's all that we really can do. And all that matters follows that balance and harmony. So whichever way you slice it, whichever way you look at it, nothing changes until and unless we change, right? Nothing harmonizes until and unless we harmonize. And for our minds, for our personalities, I'm speaking collectively, that are so addicted to the outcome, that are so addicted to the physical journey, to the legacy that we leave behind, to the things, the shiny things that we can see and create, and the big stuff, bigger and better and all that. It is a difficult, it is a challenging perspective. But when you give yourself permission to explore it and sort of reach a level of inner peace and inner harmony, you will almost certainly come to the conclusion that what you experienced then is so much more compared to what you could ever experience through the materialistic approach. And at some point, at some point, some generation has to, on a bigger scale, break the mold. But I've sort of watched this pattern. I just want to do this and that and get this and that and achieve this and that, and then I will. Well, to take the 40,000-foot view or to go into the inner spaces and calm down, slow down, detach. In the practice of meditation, which has become such a loaded word that I don't even like to use it, but in the practice of meditation, in the beginning, when somebody starts to practice it, uh, what often is the guidance is your thoughts will be very active, and people then try to not think. Good luck, right? Or they try to not, imagine anything. But what usually happens when people begin meditating or go into deep praying journeys is that thoughts are still there. And if you can, you don't engage with the thoughts, you just are the observer. Now, here's a paradox. If you are the observer and the thoughts are still there, then who's the thinker? Who at that point thinks those thoughts if it's not you who's observing those thoughts, right? If you've ever laid awake at night and you couldn't sleep and you had sort of a panic attack or something similar where your mind just rushed and rushed and rushed, and if you found a way to calm yourself down, but your mind was still rushing, there were two things happening at the same time. Your mind was doing its thing, and you, the observer, was doing your own thing. Now that's a paradox because it means there's more than one you, and there is. There's parts of you. And only when those parts begin to get back into harmony can you actually see life and reality for what it is. Before, you simply can't. It doesn't matter how many books you read, it doesn't matter how many videos you watch or courses you go to. If you don't seek that harmony, you don't see life that way. It's just impossible. So when you get there at some point and you pass that point in the meditative journey, it's like, imagine that for most of your life, you thought that what is real is what is above the surface, right? Imagine being a body of water and you think that reality is just what's above the surface because that's what you see. And then for the first time during maybe your first meditative journeys, it's like snorkeling. So now you see a few feet above, below the surface, and you go, "Holy moly! There's this whole other world there." The more that you practice this, the more you realize there's a vastness. There's a vastness that's it's indescribable, and that vastness is much bigger than the reality that you can see. And there's a sense of home, a sense of belonging into that vastness that you begin to experience. Now, then, let's just skip forward here. What do you do with that, right? Because that's the human mind. So what do I do with that? So how do I turn this into a business, or how do I, whatever? Um, and there's this beautiful saying. It's a long saying, but the short version of it is, and I've used this a lot, is, and another loaded word, but here it is. Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. In other words, it is not the doing that we do that matters so much. It's who we are as we're doing the doing that matters mostly. So we, if we give ourselves permission, are shifting into the true who-ness of who we are, if you will, or the isness of what we are. And then all that is happening, the stage, it becomes so clear. It becomes a defined thing where you can see the stage, you can see the actors, you can see the curtains, you can see the lights, you can see the director, you can see all of it. And you can say, I'm here, it's okay. I'll play my part, but that's not who I am. This is not real. And if that is what you want to do, you can also say, at some point, I'll stop playing altogether and I'm going home. I'm not doing this over and over and over again. That is okay. That you can do that. That's true freedom. And in all of the seriousness of what is going on, that is the eternal perspective that we always need to have. What is different, for example, that today, right now, in many parts of the world, people are relaxed enough to contemplate this perspective that I just gave. For example, in 2020, that was almost impossible. Very few people were able to hold that space while all of the madness was going down. And so the communication had to shift. And so it was like we had to take another round around the playing field and get back to the beginning point again. And that's okay too. And that's why we say in this construct, we have these energy and time windows. When something as significant as the COVID stuff happens, right? Which the significance was the incredible psychological operation that it was. That was the significance of it. When that happens, so much of human bandwidth is clogged up with that shit, with the messaging, with the counter messaging, with how am I going to go and buy food and how am I going to do this and all that, that there's very little bandwidth for contemplation of these concepts. And that was the purpose of it. That was the entire purpose of the exercise, was to do that. So here we have an opportunity, and we have to use those seconds, those minutes, those hours that we have, because we all know this construct here is working on its next project to distract us from the truth and who we really are. All righty. Do we have any questions? We have a few minutes for some questions.
Not yet, but you didn't announce anything.
Yeah, so I said in the beginning, we're going to do some today we're going to do a little bit of Q&A, so please feel free. And it doesn't have to be a question that relates to this subject. It can be about anything else. So please feel free, and we're going to if you want to, I'm going to answer a few questions today. And Christine can she can highlight them in the live chat.
Are you answering even private ones?
What are private questions?
I don't know.
If you find a question that's private and inappropriate, put it on the screen. I'll answer accordingly. There, people often start with, "Can I ask you something?" And I say, "You can always ask. It doesn't mean I'll answer." Pam says, "What is your theory on soul trapping?" Are you talking about the idea that our souls are trapped in this construct and in a reincarnation cycle? If that is that, I'll answer it the way that I see it. The real trap is ignorance. So, ignorance is it's probably what keeps people within their lives and within larger cycles in a state of suffering and in a state of fear and in a state of and that ignorance is a choice. We at some point we start seeing that it's a choice, because life tends to bring things to us, knowledge, wisdom, teachings, but it requires some discipline. It requires some effort on our part to engage with that. And so the real trap is our ignorance. Because here's the thing, the karma wheel, the reincarnation cycle, all of this does exist. But that doesn't mean that you are bound to it if you don't want to be. So the trap is the belief that it all is inevitable and we don't have a choice. Oh, Gerson, our dear friend. Um, okay, so I'm going to put my glasses on for this. Can you clarify, who am I? Most people seem to jump to I am an eternal being. I'm not sure that's what you mean. You are referring to an exercise that I suggested to you all in our locals community. And because this requires a longer explanation, I'll just point everyone, join us on locals, inspired.locals.com, and I'll answer that question in depth there because it requires this entire prequel. Okay, so I'll answer it there. Yeah. Do you think that Elon Musk will be the new Bill Gates? I said a few years ago, in a private conversation, they're literally sacrificing Bill Gates. They were, and the way that he was put on display on media for his crap. So they were sacrificing a model that never worked. The Bill Gates model never really worked. I don't ever met a person who wasn't paid who said, "What a great guy." Uh, so yes, Elon Musk is a Bill Gates replacement, in essence, pushing the same things, just um, marketing it differently. And I don't even think of Elon Musk as a human being. I think of Elon Musk as a sort of a conglomerate of AIs that operate in the name of a human being. Do you think the masses deserve a future? That's some big judgment you're asking of me. Um, when we think of this realm, and when we think of our ignorance, then our ignorance says that everybody who looks like us must be like us. And I think we discuss this quite often, that there are many people out there who aren't really people. They are inserts, they are a backdrop construct. And then others say that is dehumanizing. It would only be dehumanizing if I would conclude from that something needs to be done to those people, which I never do. I'm simply saying they're part of the construct. They fulfill a role, but not the same role as divine spark. So if you ask if you ask a fish to be a bird, then that's going to cause a lot of trouble. I think that the the future, the way that I see it, is that everything returns to its true nature, its true state of being. And we've been whacked out of that. So to the best of my abilities, that's how I can answer it, that everything that can return to its true nature, of course, will by default have a future. That's a fantastic question. What is the best way to deal with trauma, to get past it and move on? Because here's the thing, none of what I just talked about for 30 minutes or so really is possible without the healing of these deep wounds. So we have referred to two methods that each serve a purpose. Specifically, the trauma healing method that we have used for many years, that works for a big number of people, is called the journey. It's a distinctive process. You can learn more on thejourney.com with a practitioner that guides you through the process, which is incredibly powerful, and that gets to the root of the trauma and involves a healing process in it. Now, it's not as much as, one time and done thing. Sometimes it requires a few more journeys. There's a um, emotional journey is what they call it, and then there's a physical journey, but both ultimately serve the same purpose. So that is one modality. Deep trauma healing is almost impossible to facilitate on yourself. So if you are a practitioner, then the chances are higher. But I would say that the success rate of self deep trauma healing is extremely low, and that is okay. We were not supposed to be everything all in one being, and there are facilitators and helpers out there. So if you go to thejourney.com, you can learn about the method, you can read the book, you can find practitioners and just educate yourself on that. And the second one is, before we go to that next question, the second method that we love is family constellation therapy. It's slightly different because it can tap into traumas that affect your entire family system that you might not be aware of. And you know, that is sort of when something has happened in your family history that you don't know, but it has a deep effect on you. In other words, if you can't find the root cause of something in your own life, sometimes that's the reason why. And family constellation therapy is basically a process that helps to put things back in order. And one practitioner that we have heard tremendous things about is Mark Wolin. So you might look that up and just learn about it, or you can go to the Hellinger Institute. And Bert Hellinger was the founder of this method. Incredible, and learn all about it. Family constellation therapy. Alrighty, Coleman. Is RFK Jr. removing fluoride from the water to free people's pineal gland? I don't know. I don't know that this is going to happen. The fact that it's 2024 and we're still talking about fluoride in water is repulsive. But um, I have said that I actually believe that that's one of the things that they're actually going to do, the fluoride thing, um, because it's easy to do, very very easy to do, by the way, and it would have a huge effect in public relations, right? It will have a huge effect. But then the devil's advocate is, what are they replacing that with? And I'm not talking necessarily about RFK Jr., but what are the entities that wanted to fluoridate you and your brain? What do they have so that they don't need the fluoride in the water any longer? See, we have to be streetwise too, and sort of vigilant like that. Will we return to prime reality, break out of this matrix? Well, the safest the safest way that I know to predict that is what I just talked about earlier today, is when what think about the Matrix movies just for a moment. What was the real message? What was the real realization in all of it? You know, if you look at the hero's journey, right? I mean, that's one of the archetypes of our reality, a hero's journey. We love those. We all love those. When you look at the hero's journey, Neo, the realizations, the deaths that he died, you know, the perceptual deaths, one and then the next layer and the next layer and the next layer, and ultimately, where did he arrive? I'm not going to answer that. But when we return to truth, how could any other outcome but prime truth, realness be possible? So I'm asking you, can we return to truth and be in truth and live in truth and with truth in all that is, and not return to our prime state of being? Fearlessly phoenixing. Two-part question. I see that that's smart. That's the women. What's your take on intuitive downloads, and what does one do with the information you obtain, especially when confirmed? Um, well, intuitive downloads, you know, that when you're a woman, you have usually easier access to those intuitive downloads than men. Not that men don't get them, but women have, you know, especially mothers. There's a deeper connection to that on a daily basis. But when you can distinguish between body downloads and intuitive downloads, that's important. So the body as a computer system, a biochemical electric computer system, it gives incredibly powerful signals that are based on habits and based on previous experiences. And a lot of times people mistake the biochemical signals for intuition. So that is one thing that needs to be trained. But when it is really intuition, that is an eternal guidance system, that I trust fully. I don't always understand it in a moment, but I trust it. And what do you do with the information that you obtain, especially when confirmed? Well, that is up to you, right? I mean, this is what your free will does. Most people, I'll tell you the negative side of it. Most people, they have an intention, um, they have a goal, if you will, whatever that goal is. I'll not judge it, but they have a goal, something that they want to experience and achieve. And then they set out the intention that they want to reach that goal. And then they receive intuitive guidance as to what they should do. And then they say, that can't be, I mean, no, that's not how I imagine it. So then they don't do it. And then they whine about not reaching that goal. I mean, that's sort of the story we heard most often. So those who actually do live a self-actualized life, they trust in their intuition 100%. Was that the last question?
Yes, I gotta go.
Okay. Well, it was a good last question. Thank you. Thank you all for being here with us. We're going to do this again, my friends, but here's what I will close with. The same saying that I said during the show. Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. And here's why. There are these two patterns in this reality that I've seen repeat over and over again. They are the same principle, but one plays out in the fear spectrum, in the worry spectrum, and one plays out in the hope spectrum. So there are groups of people all over the world that live in the anticipation of a very, very, very bad event. They prepare for that. They basically live their life focused on that very, very bad event. And everything looks at that. And then there are the people in various groups and cults and religions and whatnot that anticipate a very, very, very good event. Whether that is the ascension into 5D, or whether that is the solar event, or whether that is whatever that is, or whether that is the Q and Trump team, doesn't matter. The same principle. What that does, and that has been doing for generations, is keeping good, really good people from taking steps to help themselves. And that has been our biggest observation, is that all these campaigns are always aimed at keeping people as passive as possible. And if I can tell you one thing, if you take one step each day, whether that is a breathing technique in the morning, or whether that is a short meditation, or whether that is a gratitude walk, or whether that is doing one thing that you've always wanted to do, you get one step closer to who you really are and the best possible version of you. And then these events, quote unquote, matter less and less and less. So these events are simply representations of a savior figure. And what I'm telling you is, you are and always have been your own savior. And if we can embody that on a significant scale, then we will see truth literally also in this reality. So that's what I would love to encourage everyone to step away from hopium, step away from fearium, and acknowledge who you really are, and that's all residing within you and always has been and always will be. All right, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. Yes, thank you. Thank you all. Also, we put this, Christine created this beautiful shirt. It's called Be the Glitch. I love that. Be the glitch you want to see in the Matrix. It's in the video description. There's a coupon code too, so you can save till the end of the month. And if you want to, in a little bit, we'll do a coffee and truth on locals. Inspired.locals.com. If you haven't yet, join us there. We'd love to see you. We love you. We appreciate you. And we will be back with you again very, very soon. Now, you could be only a few clicks away from experiencing something amazing, something that has changed thousands of lives all over the world. I'm talking about a high consciousness field similar to those at pilgrimage sites and sacred places. It's where people go to heal, to connect, and to become the best possible version of themselves. With FLFE, you can bring such a high consciousness field into your home right now. It's a spiritual quantum technology based on the work of Nikola Tesla. Better sleep, more energy, greater well-being, improved finances, electrosmog mitigation. These are only some of the things people on the FLFE service are experiencing. Try it now for 15 days completely free of charge, no credit card needed. Just click on a link down below to start your free, no strings attached FLFE trial right now.